everyone. Welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, the podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters, with your questers Josh and Dan. I am Dan.
I am Josh.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things retributical and rebellious as we talk about the Liferock Rebellion.
Retributical?
I couldn't think of anything better than that. So I had to make up a word. I know, totally. I was going to say vengical, but that didn't really make a whole lot of sense. So if you have any questions for us, especially about those stupid words I get to make up, please feel free to email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. I know one listener out there is writing down every stupid word I say on every single podcast, and I don't envy you at all because they are half the time made up and stupid. So anyway, the Liferock Rebellion, as detailed in at least one book, has a nice 4th edition update that we get to later on in the show because they're part of the updated timeline.
Ish. Well, ish.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, this is a fun rebellion. So I'm amazed it made it into the secret societies of Barsaive because this is more like overt society.
Well, yes and no. They are secret in the sense that they are not necessarily openly operating. The Therans sort of know who is involved with them in the broad scope of things, but they don't know like each individual member or agents and various other things. They are a secret society in a sense, but they're also not. Yeah, I mean, like in the same way that the Therans know about the holders of trust and all the details of them. The various other organizations, they're not secret because the Therans are aware of them, in a sense. But they're secret in the sense that, the Liferock Rebellion is not the Kingdom of Thrall, right? They're not the government of Europa or something like that.
No, not at all. No. So this was kind of recent, per se, air quotes, because it was we're going to kick down your door, plant something here, and we're surprised there's a rebellion involved after the fact.
Yeah. The Liferock Rebellion came to be as a result of Theran actions. When the Therans landed the Triumph on top of Iopan on the shore of Lake Ban, they landed it on top of a Liferock. And there were Obsidimen, who were members of the Brotherhood of that Liferock, that were not there at the time that it got landed on. And basically, they all got together and said, hey, this sucks. We're going to free our brethren from this Theran oppression, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and revenge will be ours because you don't do that.
Right.
I mean, who does that?
The Therans.
Well, Therans do that.
And the leader of the rebellion itself is Omasu.
Yes. High Circle Troubadour.
The well-known troubadour and merchant prince of Travar, who prior to the landing of the Triumph was not known to be a member of that brotherhood, but then decided to turn a not insignificant portion of his fortune and energy to this organization that he and his fellow Obsidian brothers founded.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, he is the de facto elder at the moment, is, not under the Triumph in the Liferock, dead. So he is the de facto leader, one of the elders, and the other one, second in command per se, is Grenal, also an elementalist, Obsidian. So they're kind of in charge, and they do all the moving and shaking and directing of how they're going to impact Thera as financially as possible, because they're doing stuff as far as economics and trade and price gouging and so forth and so on. So they're using all the capitalist tactics that they possibly can to hurt Thera as much as possible. So other members of the Liferock Rebellion are all members of the remaining members of Iopan Liferock who were outside adventuring at the time, or at least exploring at the time. So all the other Obsidian members there. And also, there are some Tiskrang houses that have been enlisted as well. House Vistriman and House Certus, because they oppose Theran-backed House Catention.
Yes, and also because the Tiskrang revere Iopan as the starting point of the pilgrimage route that runs from the shore of Lake Ban there along the Serpent all the way up to the cliff city of House Syrtis itself. And so it is an important cultural site, not just for the Obsidimen that were there, but for the Tiskrang as well.
Yeah, so they jacked that whole thing up. Way to go, Thera. Nice.
Well, in fairness, Thera wanted to demonstrate their might. They wanted to make a statement, and landing a fortress on top of a significant cultural site in the heart of Barsaive absolutely makes a statement.
It does. It's like tweaking the nose of, never mind. So we're here and we're going to stay. Oh, you didn't expect back? How brash of you.
I think they expected pushback. I don't think that's catching them by surprise at all, because the point of dropping the Triumph where they did was to demonstrate to their rebellious province that they were now turning their attention there.
We're here to take you back.
They just long-term kind of, I don't want to say necessarily that they miscalculated, but they perhaps underestimated the involvement and effort that would be turned to ousting them, not only from the Liferock Rebellion and Thrall and the Tiskrang, Aropagoi, but the dragons as well.
Agreed.
We talked about in the past how, and we're kind of going far afield here, but I feel like this is important to place all of this in context. We've talked about sort of the immortal elves and how Thera was in a way founded, and its objectives are all driven by the immortal elves and a faction of theirs desire to control the world and blah, blah, blah. But there are only so many immortal elves, and there are a lot of people involved with the Theran Empire, many of whom probably don't have any idea about the secret origins of the Empire, and so are just going and doing their colonialist, empirical nonsense. They don't have necessarily the understanding what the dragons are likely to do when Thera decides to flex their muscles in Barsaive again. And you've got a bunch of people looking to profit and to throw their weight around in an area that they feel is theirs.
Absolutely, because Omasu was courting great dragons to help this rebellion, along with other things that could be considered, other groups that could be considered as allies, if full-blown allies, but at least economic allies and partial allies, like the Vivain resistance, other merchants and caravans, and anybody who owed Omasu a favor. He's calling in every single favor he can get to hurt the Therans as much as possible. Kingdom of Thrall, considered an ally at the same time. Carafad was being courted as an ally as well, because if they help, throw off Thera, it's all good for them too.
Honestly, anybody who has interest in kicking Theran butt would be allied with the Liferock Rebellion. And really, in a way, the Liferock Rebellion, at least in the pre-Second War era, acted as a go-between and partisan force and intelligence network, making their information and whatever available to the various other parties that would be interested in doing that in a way that allows a certain amount of diplomatic deniability that would not necessarily be the case if agents of Carafad, for example, were directly meeting with agents of House Vestrimen, that you can have some back channel communications that are going on between these greater powers that is less susceptible to interception by Theran spies and agents.
So Omasu was really, like I said, calling in every single favor he possibly could. He was also financially backing creation of new airships, new riverboats for additional goods and services to be up and down the river and through the skyways, and really, blockading as much as possible the involvement. And so if he could strangle them economically, the war is won without firing a shot. Of course, this is kind of where we get into the 4th edition update where, all of this, the Liferock Rebellion kind of started the prelude to war, implemental campaign for 1st edition. And I think we need to bring people up the whole 10 years as to where the Liferock Rebellion kind of is now. So I'm going to sit back and just let Josh go.
Well, yeah, the Game Master's Guide in the timeline, sort of how it came before history chapter, talks a little bit about the activities of the Liferock Rebellion and how they were involved with ousting the Therans from the Triumph. The behemoth itself is grounded, and the enchantments and elemental magics that allowed it to fly have been
nullified,
removed, or dispelled, or whatever. So the fortress itself is not going anywhere. It's conceivable that it could be fully dismantled, but that is a massive undertaking. But see, now I'm trying to remember because I didn't look this up beforehand. If I recall, I think that post-war, post the Therans being expelled from the Triumph, it has been claimed by Omasu and his Brotherhood and is sort of, in a way, acting as a base for the Liferock Rebellion, which still exists even with the Therans having been primarily ousted from Barsaive, but its role has shifted rather than being dedicated solely to the goal of ousting the Therans and freeing the trapped Obsidian from the Iodia Liferock. There has been a little bit of a recognition on Omasu's part that there are still greater threats to Barsaive, the Denerastus being one of them, but also the Therans themselves are potentially interested in returning to Barsaive at some point in the future. And so is continuing to maintain the intelligence network that has been developed in order to kind of help keep tabs on things and dispatching deniable assets in pursuit of goals that would thwart enemies of Barsaive.
Yeah. I mean,
there's a little bit more information about them that's provided in the Travar book. Not a lot, but some additional sort of current timeline update status of things.
Because the Triumph was therefore granted to Omasu, but the Blood Elves helped as well. A small contingent sent by Queen Alakia. And he's now made the Triumph into a new hub of trade for the Overland Trading Company. And so he's claimed it and redeemed it and is doing what he can to, I can say, slowly dismantle it, but at least help heal the Liferock itself underneath the Triumph. So he's...
Yeah, because one of the things that was done by the Therans is that they were tapping into the magical energies of the Liferock itself to help enhance the enchantments and defensive protections of the fortress itself from the attack that they knew was eventually coming against it.
There is an update in the Game Master's Guide, page 35, if you want to read about that. That's wonderfully done and furthers along the timeline. So, I mean, the Liferock Rebellion is incredibly cut and dried. They weren't there until the Triumph landed. Yeah. They did what they had to do, strangled Thera financially speaking, economically speaking, and then eventually an assault was committed against the Triumph itself, claim it and retake it, and they did that. And now the aftermath, 10 years away from now, is working. So, it's still in place a little bit here. So it's kind of a quick encapsulation of the rebellion and all the members thereof.
Yeah, and it has the advantage of the networks that already existed of the Overland Trading Company itself in terms of merchant envoys and caravans and trade agreements that were already in place and provide excellent cover for agents to move about and information to move about within that already existing network. The Therans know that it's happening, but don't have the manpower necessarily to deal with all of it.
Yes.
They have pretty decent control over the Triumph itself and the immediate area surrounding it. But once you get outside of that sort of immediate sphere of influence, there is a lot that the Overland's network and the Liferock Rebellion as an sort of piggybacking on that can do to just move information and material to where it needs to go.
Yeah, it's kind of like they brought a knife to a card game and they just got outbet because Omasu's like, I'll just strangle your money, dude.
Again, I don't think that looking at it in hindsight,
Yes.
right? Again, kind of putting it into context. If you look at things in hindsight in terms of what happened in the aftermath of the Triumph landing, it's kind of easy to armchair quarterback that and postgame it and say, oh, the Therans made a big mistake by landing the Triumph there. I honestly don't think that it was that big a mistake.
I agree.
I think there is a little bit of typical Theran hubris involved there.
Fair.
We were kind of driven out previously. We had just recently emerged from the Scourge. We were not really ready to bring a full sort of military might to bear on this. We had other things that we were interested in, and we'll get to them eventually.
Yeah.
And that the landing of the Triumph was a statement that, okay, now we're going to be paying a bit more attention to you. And within the context of that, it was an understandable decision.
Yes.
The Triumph provided a strong base of operations for Thera to operate out of in the heart of Barsaive, or very close to it. Previously, while they had patrols and troops and agents and whatnot operating, their real strong military presence was sequestered all the way in the southwest, and technically even in Barsaive, but in Vivain.
Way out there.
Right, a separate province. So having the Triumph where it was, there is nothing quite so effective as an instant fortress, right? Imagine the capability of present-day military if you could just drop an army base somewhere out of nowhere, without needing to expend a huge amount of effort to get it constructed in the first place. Now we built it elsewhere, we fly it where we need to and just drop it. So it gave them a really strong base of operations to operate out of. It made a very strong sort of psychological statement when it comes to, we're going to drop it on this significant cultural site. And we did that both for the psychological impact that it will have culturally on House Vistriman, but also have access to a significant magical power source in the Liferock itself. There are very, very good reasons why they chose the site that they did. We've got this behemoth that is soon to be decommissioned. We might as well make some use of it. I can't necessarily fault the effort and the decision that was made. And when you consider that between the landing of the Triumph, you've got the timeline there, right? The amount of time between the landing of the Triumph and the actual Second War is a space of years that involved a bunch of work on the part of the Liferock Rebellion and the Kingdom of Thrall and various other powers, the dragons and whatnot, to build the coalition and get everything in a place where they could attack the Therans and have a chance at victory.
Yeah, because that was 1809. The Triumph lands at Eodia. So, yeah.
Right. And then what's the year that the
Hardwood incident is 1512, so 3 years later.
So three, either late 1512 or 1513 was when the war actually happened. Yeah. So, I mean, how long were we in Afghanistan?
Oh, long time.
That's a space of 4 or 5 years between the initial statement and when something was actually able to be done about it. It's not like the Therans landed and then bing, bang, boom, they were kicked out.
No.
That's a not insignificant period of time. It's just that long term, it seems easy to second guess that. But, you had a lot of work that needed to be done and a lot of effort and a lot of diplomacy and various other things that were going on. None of the great powers of Barsaive would have been capable of driving out the Therans on their own. It required the information gathering and operation of the Liferock Rebellion and the Kingdom of Thrall and Carafad and House Vistriman and House Sirtis and Travar to a certain extent, and the dragons offering their own magical knowledge and whatever. There was a lot of work that had to go into it. Obviously, it fell in our protagonist's favor. And there was a cost for it. I mean, long term, Thrall was lost their royal line. They were destabilized. Jairus fell to the Denerastus. A lot of people died. There was a lot of sort of damage that was done as a result of those efforts.
It does. I was just
It
saying.
all makes a lot of sense. I don't necessarily think that I agree with that as the Secret Society's book indicates, because they have all of these reports and information that they're gathering on these factions and groups that are opposing them or might be a threat or might be useful in terms of turning them against other organizations and stuff like that. And it's just a matter of, ultimately, Barsaive had player characters on their side.
Well, yeah, there's that.
That's what the turnaround was. If you kind of like read the descriptions of what happened, you can see the places. Here is where the player characters went in and did the thing that turned the tide and saved the day, or whatever.
Absolutely.
I think there was perhaps a little bit of hubris or overestimation of their own abilities or underestimation of the capability of Barsaive to come together to drive them out.
Typical for Thera.
Yeah, typical for Thera. And I think it also didn't help that they were not fully able to bring as much of their military might to bear as they otherwise could have, because there were other things going on in other parts of the empire that they needed to pay attention to as well.
Which was going to be my second point, which is that was, move A. They didn't follow it up with move B to really, maintain force. But that's just, again, armchair quarterback.
Yeah. And again, there's sort of a question. Is there any reason that they could have predicted, like, oh yeah, the dragons are acting against us and the dragons destroyed one of our vedettes or a couple of things? Is there any reason that they would have expected that the dragons would have taken those downed Theran ships, found an alternate way to pilot them, and use them in some kind of Return of the Jedi Imperial shuttle move to get past the defenses of the Triumph to land a strike team inside it to open the gates from inside?
How do you predict that? You don't.
You can't, ultimately.
No.
It is kind of a very, like, Return of the Jedi assault on the forest moon of Endor situation.
Totally.
Where you've got, multiple pieces of a plan that all kind of need to go off the way that they need to in order to be successful. And there are any number of ways that things could have gone badly for the Barsaivian forces.
Yeah.
But of course, again, because they are our protagonists, in effect, they're going to win the day. It's just going to potentially be costly or difficult to do that.
So I think we've had a lovely discussion about the Liferock Rebellion. Where does anybody use them now in the 4th edition timeline update?
The Liferock Rebellion is a group that is tailor-made for a player character or company to be affiliated with or to do jobs for. They are ostensibly a group that is dedicated to a certain amount of freedom and protection of Barsaive. They have an intelligence network that would keep them informed of threats or problems or whatever in various parts of the province, and have the financial backing to pay professionals to go and take care of things for them.
And be nicely paid at that.
When you've got one of the wealthiest people in Barsaive as your financial backer, there's plenty you can do there. And so the Liferock Rebellion is really, like, if your player character group is a little bit less willing to ally themselves closely with Thrall, for example, especially in the post-war situation where Thrall is a little bit shakier in terms of their positioning as a guiding light for Barsaive.
Yeah.
The Liferock Rebellion is a little bit more independent in terms of what they're up to. They are not beholden to a particular political power. They are sort of interested in furthering the ideas of a free and independent Barsaive. I mean, in one part because it allowed them to drive the Therans out, but in second part because it also continues to allow Omasu to make scads and scads of money.
Well, there's that.
So, yeah, the Liferock Rebellion can either be an occasional patron for your group. They can crop up and have something that they want player characters to deal with anywhere in the province for the most part.
Yeah.
Or you could have them be a long-term focus around which the campaign is built, rather than just an occasional employer. Again, they're sort of relatively straightforward. There's something that is, in one sense, kind of custom built to be an organization that player characters are likely to be or would want to be associated with in some sense. They can be particularly useful if you decide you're running a game in that sort of prelude to war / build up to the war time period,
there you go.
where they would be a lot more involved with dedicated sort of anti-Theran activities. If you want to make that the theme of your campaign, it becomes even more effective to use them in that regard. So yeah, unlike some of the other organizations where we've talked about where having them in your game is going to necessitate a particular focus, either thematically or geographically, the Liferock Rebellion is so expansive in one sense that you can use them for just about anything.
Fair. I like the sound of all of that. Any final thoughts? Because again, this is a very quick encapsulation because this secret society hasn't been around nearly as long as some of the others and have a very focused antagonist in their own regard. And so they're not as widespread as far as their outreach is concerned. But I think, anything else we forgot to add?
No, I think we covered this pretty well. These are a great little organization. They're not super complex, but you could, especially again, if you're looking at that sort of interstitial prelude up to the Second War period, potentially look into historical inspirations like the French Resistance or other sort of World War II rebellious activities against Nazi occupation and stuff like that. And if you are running a, for lack of a better term, atypical game where you might have your group that are playing Theran agents or working for Iopos in some capacity, you could even use the rebellion as a potential antagonist or adversary, because obviously the Therans and the Denerastus would have interest in interfering with or putting down the rebellion in some capacity.
Totally. So I think, folks, if you have any questions for us, please feel free to email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail. We'd like to have those as well. Hear your lovely voice broadcast for everyone else to hear besides just me and Josh talking back and forth. So until next time, I think it's time for you to go add rebellion to your legend.
Have a good night, everybody.